Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Menche, and I'm running for mayor to give all Lambertville residents a choice and a voice. I'm committed to keeping Lambertville affordable and livable, and I have a strong track record as a respected community leader. I'm in the minority of that last polling question, Matt. So there was only one person who had water on a floor above the basement. Well, I did too. 3 weeks ago, Lambertville was flooded, and my house was on Ferry Street. My heart goes out to everyone who's coping and rebuilding, and to everyone who's helping in so many ways. My wife Courtney and I have been overwhelmed with gratitude and emotion for the countless volunteers who've brought food and drink and smiles, who've provided hugs and childcare, who've hauled debris and furniture, who've scooped muck out of basements. The list goes on and on, just amazing work. It's like they descended from heaven and then they were gone before you could even really thank them. Amazing. In fact, our grizzled veteran remediation contractor choked up last week saying to us, he'd never seen that in his entire career. So many volunteers helping on a muck out of a basement. But we want everyone to know that Ferry Street is staying strong and Lambertville is staying strong, and this campaign is staying strong. I've been talking with friends and neighbors, environmentalists, engineers, government officials. There is hope for Lambertville, but there is a lot of work ahead of us. Together, we can strengthen our disaster planning, warning, and communication systems. We can strengthen our emergency management resources and procedures, and we can make sure they're tightly integrated with the county, which has a robust emergency management system and agency. We want our response to be as fast and as effective as possible. Given the frequency of flooding here, my house has flooded now 4 times in 16 years, even though I live a block from Swan Creek. We must make flood mitigation a consistent priority of our city government. Let's together create a forward-thinking sustainability plan. We live in an environmentally sensitive rural area. We can't accommodate overdevelopment. That's clear. This is long-term work. It's going to require dedication and patience, and it's going to take all 3 years of the next administration and beyond. This disaster has intensified my love for Lambertville. It's reinforced my decision to run independently as well. Running independently is the best way for me to represent all residents and not the status quo. I decided to run independently to secure nomination directly by the people. And as a result, for the first time in many, many years, all Lambertville residents have a choice in this general election. The June primary did not end the democratic process here. All residents also have a voice. My candidacy lets folks who might be perceived as dissenters participate in the debate of critical issues that are facing us right now. And running independently has also let me work with all residents, regardless of their party affiliation, on effective solutions to our challenges. I stand for putting people first. So tax increases over the last 3 years, 25% to 30%, have been unaffordable, unfair, unacceptable. We have to do something about it. It's not enough to just keep a keen eye on spending or to just practice fiscal responsibility. My pledge, if elected mayor, is a 0% increase in your municipal tax. You won't pay a single dollar more in your city tax. We'll accomplish this by cutting unnecessary spending without sacrificing any essential services. About affordability, let's put to rest finally the proposed relocation of the police station. It's diverted sorely needed funds to consultants and other sources. We can create other alternative mechanisms to fulfill the need for the 5 units. It might be the only silver lining that comes out of this disaster, by the way, in my view. Together, we can launch a transformative grant-winning and fundraising initiative. Our treasured historic assets like the library or city hall and other assets like Cavallo Park need outside funds to thrive, to be maintained and upgraded. Based on my experience with grant winning and fundraising, I will lead a team of Lambertville residents to energize and organize outside fundraising. For a model, consider the old jail in Sheridan Park on York Street. This is a $210,000 historic restoration project that I'm managing. I secured grants from the county. This project requires no city funds. This is a model for us as we look at other assets and other projects where we need money and the city just doesn't have it. I'm dedicated to improving our quality of life. Our taxes have been going up dramatically, and what are we getting for it? So before the flood, our infrastructure seemed to be deteriorating right in front of us. Our streets and our lots were looking poorly maintained. We need to focus on the fundamentals. If elected mayor, I'll enter into a contract with residents to make quality of life a top municipal priority. That means ensuring the reliable delivery of essential services like trash pickup, snow removal, Sparkle Week, street sweeping. These are the issues that affect all of us daily. We need to enforce responsible development instead of what's become the status quo to allow what seems to be only luxury housing. We need to invigorate our business district. That means both helping existing businesses and encouraging new ones and removing bureaucratic hurdles that hinder economic success. We will keep Lambertville proactively inclusive for our LGBTQ residents. We will promote diversity and will support human rights initiatives. That's quality of life. I do have a strong track record as a respected civic leader. So I've been president of the Historical Society since 2019. I've conducted many types of programs, expert panels, tours, exhibits, concerts. For 10 years, this will be the 10th year of running the annual holiday fundraiser, a wonderful spirit-filled celebration of Lambertville's musicians. You can look forward to concerts and a flash drive of all 10 years that you could purchase. It's a fundraiser for the Historical Society. Last year, I produced the 38th annual Lambertville House Tour. Before COVID, that typically drew 800 to 900 folks who would come to walk around and enjoy Lambertville's historic homes. COVID prevented that. So I produced 9 video tours of historic homes. You can enjoy many of them on the Historical Society's website. I also curated 3 expert presentations by local architects. It was a really wonderful remote program. Since 2017, I've blogged about local residents like J.B. Klein or Sandy Hanna. I've written about organizations like the Kalmia Club. I've watched shad hauling. I've walked through Mount Hope Cemetery. I've been up in the bell tower of the First Presbyterian Church and written about it. It's all about celebrating Lambertville and sharing that with you. You can enjoy those efforts on the Lambertville Historical Society blog. For many years, I've promoted Lambertville through Facebook. 10 years ago, I created the Shadfest Facebook page and posted photos and links and information about all things Shad and Lambertville. That page now has 3,000 plus followers, and I recently turned over its administration to the Lambertville Area Chamber of Commerce. lastly, in terms of accomplishments, I'm proud of linking students with longtime residents. A few years ago, I created an interactive scholarship program where students ask longtime residents about either issues or their first job. And it's been a wonderful entry into oral history and letting folks share the history, which is a great way. You know, we all value unity and civility, and we all share the same history, and we all love it. That's part of the reasons we live here. In talking with so many folks during this campaign, I hear that people want a listener and a leader. They want someone to hear their concerns and what issues are important to them, and they want someone to represent them and take a stand. I'm prepared to do that. I welcome your support. Website is up, michaelmencheformayor.com or ilikemikeforlambertville.com. Please tell all your friends and neighbors that I will talk with anybody one-on-one or on the phone or via Zoom, according to convenience and preference during COVID. I am going door to door. I keep getting asked that. Where are you? I'm around. I'm there. So I look forward to seeing you. And I want to say thank you all. And we're going to stay strong, Lambertville strong. And I'll welcome some questions.
Thanks, Mike. Let's delve right into it, okay? We've had, while you were talking, a few questions that came up. And let me just ask the first one, okay, from one of the people on the call this evening. What is your plan for the Clausen farm?
So Councilman Stegman asked me a couple of years ago, you know, what was the Historical Society's position on the zoning overlay that, you know, initially had encompassed the Clausen property and they didn't. And I explained that the Historical Society at the time was just very concerned about preserving the old house and barn and an area around it. Fast forward to last September, we see on Zillow that it's available for sale. So the first thing I did is I contacted Erin McManus Keys, the realtor, and I said, I'm working on a virtual house tour. Can I help? If this property is for sale, I'd like to make a video. And Erin said, that would be fantastic. So I did that. It was up in the basement, down in the cellar, made a video. You can enjoy that on the Historical Society's website. 1 month later, the city emerged as a potential buyer. So that was not on the radar at all when I was there and met with Ed and Deb Clausen and made that video. First thing I did was I Googled who are experts, what are resources about really significant historic properties that we can access. And I found a book, New Solutions for Historic Homes, and an expert named Donna Harris at Heritage Consulting in Philadelphia. Her book presents, I believe, 8 different usages for significant historic properties. And they're not all that wouldn't roll off your tongue. So co-stewardship, for example. More importantly than those 8 different usages, and she gives pros and cons for each, she provides a framework for how a community can navigate these different uses and decide for itself. So I value that. Best practices, what are people doing elsewhere? And then how can we inform ourselves and make the best decision? I shared that information with Councilman Stegman. He read the book and he sent me an email saying, boy, this is great. Last spring, Councilman Stegman said, hey, maybe we should talk to Ms. Harris and maybe she's a resource. So we had a Zoom, and sure enough, she's in Philadelphia and visits Lambertville a couple of times a year, has been to the Clausen property, but only knew it as the Homestead Market, had never paid attention to the house, which is a private residence. You know, why would she have known it? And she listened to the councilman and I describe what was going on at the time. And she said, can I make one quick suggestion? if the city is deciding what to do with this property, you might want to rent out the old house, Washington's headquarters, in the interim, because it's not healthy for a really old house for its bones to be left vacant. It's been vacant now for a couple of years. You want someone living in there, and just having a resident in there also generates a few bucks for the city. So rent it out. And it's better to have a resident than a business. So that was free expert advice that I thought was terrific. Councilman Stegman, I believe, forwarded that information with the council and the mayor, and so that's where that's at. But so in short, my approach is we need to fully evaluate the different scenarios together as a community. So that means we've got the old house and barn, we've got the contemporary house, we've got the open field, we've got the commercial market. So we own, we sell, we lease. And then if we own, what are the different uses? We need to lay these out and understand these different scenarios and the pros and cons. And then we need to together make a choice. So that's how I would approach how the Clausen property gets handled.
Thanks, Mike. As you were talking again, more questions have come in. One, it says, what is your vision for affordable housing in Lambertville?
So I think almost everybody I talk to really value the concept of preserving a diverse mix of income levels. I think most folks in Lambertville say, we want there to be affordable housing here. You don't really meet people who say, no, we don't know, we only want luxury. So the problem is it's not happening. It's not the developer's fault. You know, developers don't come in and say, hey, I want to build a little 1,000 square foot bungalow and sell it for 100K. They don't do that. That's not the way our market economy works. It's up to us. It's up to the planning board, the zoning board, and the city to say, here's what's proportional. Here's what's sustainable. And here's what we want in terms of affordability. So we have to look together at a mix of perhaps ordinances. We have to look perhaps at rent control. We want affordable housing, and that doesn't mean just Mount Laurel regulated type affordable housing. That means generally affordable. So it's imperative for us to work together and to agree, and we can't continue with having 100% residential units approved and they're all luxury units.
Thank you. The next two questions have to do with taxes. One viewer has asked, how can you promise no tax increase in taxes and also additional services and activities by the city? Do you know where you would make and seek to make cuts?
So I'm not really proposing additional services. I'm reprioritizing. And I'm also very much in favor of supplementing services with either free county services, for example, special types of environmental trash removal for special projects they're out there. We just don't apply for them. But for example, Cavallo Park, you might say, well, for a whole year, we've had it. The seesaw has been missing. It's broken. If you have young kids, you know what I'm talking about. A year. The weeds are overgrown. It looks terrible. It looks shabby. So what I'm saying is, if it's true that the city can't maintain it, then it's up to someone out here on this call, organized by the city, encouraged by the city, to start a Friends of Cavallo Park, like we did with Friends of Ely Park. People want to help. They want to do it. The cities, it appears painfully that we can't handle everything like that. So that's what we're going to do there, in my view. I want to say that in terms of, well, where would you cut? I'll give you one example. So in this year's budget, we're going to pay the city attorney $96K. It's a part-time position. So 3 years ago, we paid that position $45K. We don't need the F. Lee Bailey of city attorneys. We need the Phil Faraday of city attorneys. So that's one example of one cut, and it's significant.
Mike, then I think this is a good follow-on question for you then. It says Lambertville residents are fed up with skyrocketing taxes and wasteful spending. Before the current administration, the city never had a business administrator, let alone one that garnered a six-figure salary for part-time work. Will you hire a business administrator when you're elected mayor?
No, we don't need an administrator. Our budget is stressed. We have the capable staff in-house. I had one experience with uh, the administrator, and he delayed for no reason. I needed a form letter sent to the state to get a certification for a historical project. And he sat on it for 2 months and then ended up just sending it. And the reason it was stuck in my craw is that it affected the timing of my applying for a grant. So anyway, that's just a personal experience. But look, we've had one administrator in 30 years. He sued us and won. So once bitten, twice shy on that score. But we have the staff. If we work with the council and the mayor and our staff to focus on cost savings, we can be like New Hope, which for 6 years in a row has had 0% municipal tax increase. Yes, there are differences between Pennsylvania and New Jersey, but there are a lot of similarities too. So we can act accordingly.
Thank you. This is a question that I've heard just in terms of my walkabouts in the town. And it comes from somebody who's been here for many, many generations, or at least her family. She says, I come from a multi-generational Lambertville family. My great-grandfather, Harry Shepard, was mayor for 16 years. I'm no longer financially able to live in my home in town. I'm a single mother of a son to be 5-year-old who I wish could attend the schools I went to, that his grandmother went to. Unfortunately, this is not our reality. And I'm actively looking to relocate somewhere else. My story is not unique. What do you plan to do about multi-generational families who are being economically displaced in our community?
Well, it comes down to affordable housing. I mean, that's where it starts. And, again, it's on us. It's not on the developers to come in and save the day. So we have to determine what we value. And by the way, having affordable housing means we're going to have families that with children that attend LPS and that use our library more often and participate in the fabric of our life. And so we want that selfishly, but we want it. I think the reality is, knowing how progressive Lambertville is and how community oriented we are, that we want it for them too. So I mean, that's the message. It's it's got to start with housing. Unfortunately, New Jersey is an expensive state, and we can't solve everything there. But it is. We do have a number of good social services and charities that do help for folks that really need it, and we're seeing that, by the way, every day with the disaster relief.
Thanks, Mike. Another question is because your opponent seems to be running on a platform called something called Unity. But the past 3 years, in my opinion, have been very divisive. Many people do not feel that they have a voice and that a select group of people are making decisions, and it does not feel like the democratic process is being followed. Now that Lambertville has come together, what does Mike think that he can do to continue to move Lambertville forward? How does he plan to lead our city?
So one of the motivators for me to run was last winter, people suggested, hey, you've been doing a lot in the community and you should run. And what struck me was they were folks who valued different things from different neighborhoods. So there were some folks who it was all about affordability, and I got that. And then there were some folks who was more about historic preservation. They were very focused on on some of our assets, like whether it was the Clausen property or City Hall or the library. And I got that. And that really, it made a deep impression on me, because just the nature of what I've done over the last 10 years living here is just, I have a lot of friends, all over on both sides. We don't really have an aisle here. It's not polarized in the way that the nation is. We're polarized for other reasons, but I would just say that it's natural. It felt very natural to me to run to represent everyone, and running independently positioned me to do that. And so I instantly gravitated toward that. And I thought, um, the reality is, if you're going to run, you want to run in November. You don't want to run in June. But so that was the giving you some of my some of the thought processes there around unity.
Okay, good. Another couple questions have come in. Says, how do you feel about building on the police station site? And the other one says, how do you feel? How will you move forward with the redevelopment of the police station? So, two questions that focus on the police station and your plans for it.
Yeah. This is the finger pressing the stop button on the police station relocation. I mean, it was a bad idea to start with, and it was going to open up just an inordinate amount of expense and risk. But now, in the wake of the flood, I think it's clear that we can find alternative mechanisms for affordable housing, more of it and better affordable housing than that. So we need to keep the police station there, fix the building, and make it appropriate.
Okay. Somebody wrote, besides tax control, affordable housing, disaster preparedness, which are important, what other issues do you, Mike, see as pressing to address?
Well, I guess I would go back to those quality of life. Like so I'm obsessed with the LPS parking lot, and I'll tell you why. It's like because I use it every day. I drop my kids off, and I got to navigate a lunar landscape, and I've been doing it for a year. And all we got to do is lay some fine gravel for temporary remediation. If the referendum passes, then they're going to pave it, even though the city owns the lots, not the school district. But please, it's an emblematic issue. I'm obsessed with it because I'm there, but I also relate when people go to city council meetings and say, I can't walk down Swan Street because the sidewalk is ridiculous. Yet same thing. It's the everyday issues that impact everyone, that we all have standards. We want to see them met, and we want our lives to feel easier and better.
Okay. Another question came in. This is current mayor. Okay, I guess they're referring to Mayor Fall. Created the community advisory team, CAT. Do you plan to keep this unelected group as your advisory committee, or will you dissolve this group?
My understanding is I don't think it needs to be dissolved because I think their mission is accomplished. I mean, so my understanding is that the mayor created the CAT to get community input and make recommendations about the Clausen property and the police site. So they've done that. And so I would say mission accomplished, and so we're done. The mayor said at a recent council meeting that she and Council President Taylor are working on the site plan for the Clausen property, and that it might be available in December. So that's what I'm going off of.
Okay. Based on the Clausen farm purchase contract, the Clausen family are permitted to live there rent-free until a site plan for the farm is developed and approved. If you are mayor, will the policy of rent-free continue for this family?
So I've heard that. I haven't seen paperwork on that. So I'd want to see, is that the arrangement before commenting. And so I'm not going to say yes or no just about that arrangement, which is, it was strange. The arrangement may not be that strange when you think about it, but the way we learned about it certainly seems strange. It's like all of a sudden it's it takes a flood for us to and to be talking about where we might relocate displaced folks, to learn that. Like that was a surprise. But again, let's just think that my comment earlier about that the consultant Donna Harris said, like, hey, you could rent the old house and make a few bucks. Well, guess what? That would apply to the contemporary house, the log cabin as well. We could rent it and make a few bucks to, in the interim while we're deciding. There's no harm in that. So that's my answer on that issue.
Okay. This is a little detailed question, so bear with me and the audience, if you will, as well. The writer says, I appreciate how you understand there's a difference between affordable housing to meet our Mount Laurel mandate, 5 new units for the unmet need, and keeping Lambertville affordable. Given the loss of the apartments by the CVS in the flood 3 weeks ago, what could a future mayor do to ensure developer places affordable housing in that location and not necessarily tied to the Mount Laurel issue, but by building non-luxury basic apartments, no frills, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, etc., i.e. replicate what was lost?
Sure. I mean, and I think, many of us have probably thought that all along. I mean, the building was substandard. It was identified as such in 2019 in the master plan reexamination, which is on the city's website on page like 43. So guys, planning department, when you do a master plan reassessment, don't put the recommendations on page 43, put the recommendations on page 1, and we can read the history if we want, and we don't want to, by the way, but just an aside. But so what can the city do? So we could, for example, I mean, this is where we have the planning board. We need to rely heavily on affordable housing expertise. So we could say, for example, let's have a new town-wide overlay. So no matter what's built, if there's a minimum number of units that are built, say 4, that a certain percentage of them have to be affordable. So that's one possibility, but it's up to the planning board and the council and the mayor to decide, to define what's appropriate for Lambertville in terms of affordability. And I bet that's just, I mean, look, the Village South, that's just one strip. So we don't want it to just be that philosophy restricted to one site. We want to think about affordability distributed throughout Lambertville.
Okay. Just changing course just a bit. Someone writes, being mayor is a serious, challenging responsibility. Do you see the job as 40 hours per week, or do you see it 24/7?
So I think we think about whether people on this call are leaders or you work with the leader. I mean, leadership is 24/7. When you're a leader, you don't think in terms of, you're not counting your hours. So, for example, at the Historical Society, if the security alarm goes off at the Marshall House, I'm one of 2 or 3 people who have to go over there because the police are going to show up. This is the essence of being on call when you're a leader. And I said this on Monday. I was kind of surprised I remembered it, but when this question was asked, but 10 years ago in a Hurricane Irene, I made the same stupid mistake to drive out in the middle of it. Now this time I rationalize it because I have young kids, and when the water's coming in fast into your house and you live in a house that's set low, you don't know how high the water's going to go in, so you want to leave. But it's really not good to be driving, right? But 10 years ago in Hurricane Irene, did the same thing, and I drove out through town. That time, I was able to drive north and drive out and get to 179 North. I drove past City Hall, and the lights were on, and there were silhouettes in the war room, I call it. You could instantly see that Mayor Dave and probably Dave Bird and the other folks were in there in the middle of the storm, and that's leadership. And by the way, I would extend it to, not just a time thing, but a people thing. So, I'm saying to you, I'm looking into a laptop, but I would look you right in the eye and say, I will walk down the street and give you a hug if you need it, if there's another disaster, God forbid. And I think we have to say that because given the frequency of flooding, and the amount of time it's going to be required to do mitigation, there's a real chance we're going to have something happen again. So we want to think about, how leadership will act.
Mike, just to follow up on that, another viewer asked, okay, that they said they walked the block of North Union after the flood. And it says many of my neighbors will not be able to afford the $100,000 that it will cost to lift their houses. Do you have any ideas to how to help these folks? And I know that this is still in the deliberation phase for the city and the construction office, what have you, and FEMA. Is there assistance for them out there in your experience and from your talks with the city and with the construction office?
I wish I had more insight. So look, the construction office, they're doing what they can. It seems to me, I've talked with the county leaders. I've talked with other folks who live up there, but it appears that FEMA needs to say what it's going to do, and they haven't yet. And without that, like, I don't know what the other avenues are. I presume that the current administration is doing all that they can um, through federal, state, county agencies. So I wish I had something to add, but my understanding is, and I've talked with a couple of people who live on the row across from Basel Bandwagon, and it is rough. I mean, I feel for them so badly, and they don't know the path ahead. To use one of them actually said that, and I don't think any of us know yet what it is. So we just have to wait and bond together and help.
Question came in as you were talking, if houses are condemned or if the houses are bought through the Blue Acres program that the state offers, okay, for flood ravaged communities, will these ratables be taken off the books? What would that mean from a economic standpoint or from a financial standpoint for the city in terms of taxes, okay, and what people can expect, okay, in terms of future tax bills and affordability?
Well, I mean, that's the kind of thing we got to cross that bridge when we come to it. I mean, we got to be ready, but that's not a common solution, and I think we all know the way that question was pretty specific, and that the person who asked that is probably familiar that happened in Manville, New Jersey, and it didn't go well, right? So FEMA bought out a bunch of homes. They built flood prevention infrastructure, and it didn't work. So my sense, and I could be wrong, but my sense is that FEMA doesn't often like to buy out. But if they do it, if we lose ratables, it'll take a while. We'll know, but we'll be prepared. All the more reason we always have to keep a big picture view, and that's why controlling our spending proactively is so important.
This is in the same neighborhood, but again, sadly, the writer writes, social services in this county fall very short in providing aid, especially for anyone making over $35,000 a year, which is nowhere near the local living wage. This drives out the middle class. What is your plan for the working class families to keep them in the community?
So
working class, middle class, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at a notation. She says working middle class, that is all of the classes work.
Yeah. So, a quick answer is that the county does offer a number of social services that we can take better advantage of. Lambertville, because of our geography and probably because of our political difference with the rest of the county, we tend to go our own way. And I don't want to do that. I want us to take advantage of any county service that's free that other municipalities are taking care of. Social services is a big category of that. And so that's a short answer. You see the ad hoc grassroots community relief during this disaster, and so it can be supplemented, but in terms of professional social services, I think the short answer, short of charities, is working more and more with the county, which I strongly advocate for. I work with the county, on the old jail project, for example, have great experiences and relationships with county leaders, and I would continue that.
Little change in tone. Thinking about your opponent Andrew Noack, what are two key qualities that you believe set yourself apart from Andrew?
So I'm not going to talk about my opponent. That's for you guys. You could talk to him and talk to me. I'm going to talk about two qualities of myself and like why I'm running. It's on the website. It's what I talk about. So it's like, what do I stand for, and what's my track record? So, I stand for affordability, but actually then taking a leadership um, approach and saying we're going to have a 0% tax increase. If you don't say it and publicly dedicate the staff, it's not going to happen. So this is the way I've experienced leadership, on the receiving end, working at great companies, and you folks may have too. So and then my track record, if you look at programs um, um, and other activities that I've done, you know that I've celebrated Lambertville just, as passionately as I can, and connected people. Um, and so those are the two qualities that I would say.
Okay. Again, shifting direction here. Lots of questions on parking. One viewer asks, would you consider sticker parking? And I think, Mike, you and I even spoke about that in terms of what they do in Cambridge, Massachusetts, for residents of the city. Many days I can't even park anywhere near my home.
So this is exactly the kind of issue, quality of life every day impacts many of us, that I would want to spend a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on. Like that's what I'm running for. I'm not interested in large development projects. I'm interested in these um, quality of life issues. And so sticker, let's try it. I can't think of a reason to not try it. And by the way, like on parking, I mean, this is something we all talk about this, whether at the coffee shop or live in Charlie's or wherever. People say, hey, I was flooded and I'm able to park at River Horse, and I'm able to park now at Riverwalk, the back part of the parking lot. So like that's where I did. How come we can't park there all the time? Like River Horse is vacant. So I hear the scuttlebutt currently, and many of you may have heard this or maybe not, but it was a deal in works that to make the River Horse parking lot available for perhaps employees of local businesses. Um, like to me, I've never understood why you've got a property that's been vacant for 5 years with a big parking lot. We need to be creative. We're not going to build the Leviathan parking lot that New Hope's going to do. So we need to be creative and work with what we've got. And we have available spaces. But in terms of, the short answer to that sticker program is, that sounds good to me. Like let's get on it and let's give it a shot.
Good. Thinking about your first 100 days in office, what are the two pressing issues that you would like to tackle during those first 100 days?
So the in terms of the affordability and the quality of life, the two issues are establishing how the council and I would work together with residents on each one of those. So and the and city staff. So it's on affordability. We need to all agree. Okay, if we're going to have 0% tax increase, and we know that New Hope does it, and we know that the county, by the way, has frozen rates for years as well. So we don't have to make it up ourselves. There are folks very nearby who will gladly give us the wisdom of how to do this. And by the way, I'm sure our staff can identify some areas for savings, very quickly. But it's how we work together on these issues, because it can't just be, governing by fiat. We need to work together. We've got great council members. I know we all don't agree on everything, but they all love Lambertville. They're dedicated, and we just need to work together on these these priorities, and so not spend our time on some of these other issues like relocating the police station.
Again, somebody who's obviously been affected by recent events, she writes or he writes, you suggest that social services has many programs available. Can you clarify, because they have turned the flood victims away in droves this week? They were asking for bank statements and pay stubs. If you're a single parent making under $35,000, but over 20, they want nothing to do with you.
So I need to learn more about the which social services we're talking about, and I don't want to do that. I don't think that'd be appropriate on this call. But please, if you want, we could by email through the website and follow up, and so that I could determine. As I think you're gathering, my instinct is to ask the county, what do we have here that's available to us? But the county is just one entity, but it's the natural go-to for us, right? I mean, it's the level above us as a municipality. But I would need to learn more about those, what was required and what the hurdles were there.
Good. Another viewer is asking, will you put a cap on overdevelopment in the city?
So, the question shouldn't be to one person, do you put the cap? The question should be to the planning board. What are you doing? Working with the council and the mayor. So this year, again, we've got 22 approved units and they're all luxury units. So we need to work together we know now with the flood, and people like Jeff Tittle have been saying this for years, it's just the rest of us, he's kind of ahead environmentally in saying that we're really a rural area. We look like a small city. We call ourselves a city, but we're very rural and very sensitive, very water impacted. And as we learned in the flood, it wasn't even the river. It was the creeks and just the runoff. So it's not about, the cap would fit into what is sustainable. How can Lambertville survive and thrive? And if that means a cap, then so be it.
Okay, I think a follow-up question is, what will you cut in order to achieve no tax increases? Please don't say fraud and inefficiency. Is the city overstaffed? Question mark. Are they being paid above the market rate for their jobs? Question mark. How can we get more efficiencies from your business process reengineering background?
So if you elect me, you'll find out. So look, I said earlier, I wasn't saying it to be glib. When the city attorney is a part-time position and we're paying at $96K, got a $3K raise, by the way, this year. And we 3 years ago paid $45K. If we do the math, that's $50,000 that we could save, and or a significant part of that. And so you might say, well, is that really meaningful? Well, it was meaningful this year because the shortfall was $110,000. That's what the 4.7 tax increase equated to in dollars. So saving $50,000 on one item toward the total tax levy is pretty significant. And I just picked that out. There's one item. Can we find others? You betcha.
Okay. How will you improve the planning board and the zoning board so that they're protecting the city and not helping the developers? This is a follow-on to the cap on the development question.
Yeah, before I answer that one, and then is the city understaffed? Yes, it is, but our city is understaffed, and most cities are understaffed. And I think, it's, just to be clear, and we probably always will be. We'll never be overstaffed. And all organizations, I know of Historical Society, the PTA, the library, the Chamber of Commerce, I have friends at all. We're all together. We're all understaffed. So, and we're not, and nobody, we're volunteers, but they're not, the staff really isn't overpaid. Now about the planning board and the zoning board, I mean, it appears that they have to be reconfigured, that the composition needs to change, so that the values that that I'm espousing, and I think that most people espouse about affordability are enacted. And that, you know, that's just the bottom line. Changes need to be made.
The other question came in about the Office of Emergency Management. It says, in what ways will you improve the methods in which the OEM prepares, implements procedures for natural disasters?
So, you know, a couple things there. So again, the tight integration with the county. The county's OEM is paid. You know, most municipalities like Lambertville, we don't have a paid OEM director. That's a volunteer position. And it's important. It, I think we all know, if anyone who's had some experience with it, and I guarantee that there are people on this call who've had experience with emergency management here in Lambertville. But you know, it's kind of a dull job. Not a lot happening until the disaster. So we need to. The county is set up. They have a paid, robust OEM that already interfaces with the larger agencies. So we need to be integrated with them. Secondly, and just as important, there are, you know, I referenced earlier, there are folks on this call who have experience in emergency management here at Lambertville. Dave Bird, we all know because he was the former director. There's just one gentleman, but there are others who've worked for it. We need to embrace their experience and head knowledge so that we can have the best possible plan going forward to be better prepared, because we all have to accept now that the flooding, you know, the chances of it happening again, we look at our creeks and we look at the boulders and the debris that are clogging them right now. I mean, God forbid we have another major rainfall anytime soon. The water has nowhere to go except into our neighborhoods and our homes again. So we need to, it's imperative to get everyone who has knowledge together and be better prepared and figure out what we're going to do and get our ducks in a row.
Thank you. Question from Monday, and I think it's transferred over to tonight, says, why can we not go back to the use of the men from the corrections to help with our public waste management? When were they hired? When they were hired, our system worked much better.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a mystery to me. I thought it worked well too. And we know that, so the mayor, you know, said at a recent meeting that our public works is stressed. You know, she said that basically trash pickup is all that we've got a skeleton crew and that's what they can do. So in terms of beautification or my bête noire, the LPS parking lot, you know, they just don't have the manpower, the resources right now. But we need to look at, you know, what can we afford if the prisoners, if using them works and it makes sense, then we should take a hard look at that. We also, the county, again, besides social services, the county does offer special type of trash removal projects. They'll either provide supplies and the carting for free. And in some cases, they even provide crews. And if you were to drive around the northern parts of the county, you might see them in action. But we don't see that here just because it's up to us to apply. But public works is very important. And you know, right now they're just, you know, and the flood, of course, has made their job even harder. So unfortunately for us, beautification and repair of lots and streets is going to fall by the wayside for a while, it looks like.
Just changing direction a little bit. Another question is, do you support having Zoom access to council meetings?
Yes.
Short and sweet, right?
Yep.
Another question just came in. It said, you know, thinking back upon your career, you know, there's an adage that says past success is the best predictor of future success. What in your career really provides you with a platform of expertise and experience that would help you in your job as mayor of the city of Lambertville?
So my professional experience. So, you know, I'm very fortunate. I work with um, I work at a national consulting firm that does um, mathematical optimization programming and builds custom software systems for some of the largest companies, in the United States, like a FedEx and a UPS, and we do process improvement. My colleagues, so I'm the business development and marketing department. My colleagues are the quants, the analytic folks, and when you work with folks like that, it's about the data and the facts, and it works or it doesn't, and you demonstrate value or you don't. And we interact with the C-level of other businesses. And so if you write an email or create a one-page flyer, or you have a phone call and you're talking with top managers of large companies like we do, that you have, it makes you raise your game as a person, as a business executive. And it makes you naturally have high standards because you're representing an organization that has them. And I translate to my activities here in Lambertville, and I'll give you an example. So when COVID hit, the Historical Society was in a quandary because our house tour, our biggest fundraiser every year, couldn't take place in person. People were not going to come because of COVID and walk around homes. So I said, hey, we can do it remotely. And I ended up doing that, and I invested, I don't know, 120 hours over like 2 months. I actually tracked it kind of. I was embarrassed at how much time I spent. But the reason you do it is because you have high standards and you represent something. And so I was really proud of the way that tour, if any of you on that call participated. So it was a webinar where, I made 9 videos. We had guests. So we had the three local architects, Gary O'Connor, Michael Burns, and Lisa Easton, gave fabulous presentations that are still available on the Historical Society website. We had questions, and it was all about you're representing something that has a mission. You can't give up. You got to raise your game always, always. And so that's how that's my answer to that question.
We have about 15 minutes more left, Mike. At this point, I'm going to ask the audience if they have any questions, and if so, would you please use the chat feature on Zoom or I guess Facebook Live. Matt, to submit any last questions for Mike.
I just sent you another one, and we are taking some more, so I'll send them over in a second.
Okay, thanks, Matt. The question is, what would you recommend for the land at Cherry and North Union? I guess that's the area in back of the CVS. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, which land?
The viewer's asking, what would you recommend for the land? I guess the vacant piece of land at Cherry Street and North Union.
Oh, okay.
I suspect that's in back of the CVS, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, so the corner, so where they, at one point we envisioned a park. Well, it's clear that if we have a sustainability plan, we're going to have to be thinking about storm management areas. Where does water go if when it needs to? And we'd all love to have parks all over the place, and it may be that we have parks that are also storm management areas. So I wouldn't presume to say what we would do with that spot. What I would say is we're going to get the environmentalists and engineers and planners together, and we're going to decide what makes sense in a sustainability sense.
Okay. This question has come up a couple of times this evening. It says, can we turn the city's Facebook page back on? Didn't this disaster show how important communication is? It's free. Why would we have turned it off to begin with?
Yeah, so we got to turn it back on, but I understand why it's off. I understand, and it's not just the vitriol. A part of the problem for a small organization like the city is when staff has jobs, when people ask a question about a public service on Facebook, our mindset is we want an answer PDQ. And that's a problem. It's a problem for businesses too. We have to turn it back on, and we have to allow dissenting, all voices. That's just good for, it's good for democracy. It's good for everything. I mean, I lived in New York for many years, so I'm used to, you argue and, call each other's names, and then you go to the Yankee game afterwards, and that's and then it's all good. So I'm kind of used to that. I'm being a little glib there, but we have to turn Facebook back on. You can do things like disable comments, so the city could just be broadcasting that way. But I'll tell you what, though, if you look at the population of Lambertville, and if you were to poll folks who's active on Facebook, it's a smaller percentage by a lot than you might think. So I bet a lot of us here, because this is a remote type of activity, we think, well, Facebook, it's big. But I'll tell you, when you look at the population, there are a lot of folks who are not on it. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't turn the page back on. We should.
Again, getting back to the village apartments, it says once they're demolished or the apartments are demolished, what would be your plans for that space?
Well, it's not clear yet, right? They're not officially going to be demolished. It's a private property. So my understanding is that it's currently uninhabitable. And someone feel free to correct me. Evan lied if you're on. I don't know if you're on. I'm just saying, I know Evan lied knows a lot what's going on there, but correct me if I'm wrong, but uninhabitable, but it's private property, and the owner is ultimately going to be part of that decision of whether it's torn down. But if it were, again, the mayor is not the sole decision maker about what happens. I could just tell you that it's certainly, we could take the opportunity to do affordable housing right in that spot. It seems to me, I think most of us, I can't imagine you disagree. We got to do it right, and we have to build them up, obviously. But again, we don't want to just settle with just one Band-Aid on the affordable problem. That's one site. Yes, it's badly compromised, probably going to come down, but affordability belongs throughout the fabric of Lambertville too.
Just to help add some context to your question of Evan, his response is that you're correct. The space is presently uninhabitable.
Yeah.
So
I hope there's nobody still in there.
one final question here, I think, is thinking about the contrast between the two candidates. In both cases, neither have held political office. Both have very different career backgrounds and bring totally different, backgrounds to their role as Lambertville's new mayor. Why would the voters choose you over your opponent?
A big thing is that I think you look at, again, I don't know about choosing me over the opponent. I'm saying just choosing me. So running independently is not easy. I could tell you doing it. I knew that going in, but I feel it's appropriate for Lambertville. I wanted, my knee-jerk reaction was, if you're going to be the mayor, you're going to be everybody's mayor. And what's the best way to do that? Give people a choice in November. For years, it bothered me. I mean, many of you probably too. Like, why does the June primary just decide things, then we sit around and twiddle our thumbs and just wait? Meanwhile, big issues bubble up and they need to be debated. It's a democracy. We should have candidates. So I hope you respect the fact that I'm running independently. Remember, I am a Democrat. I just decided to secure a nomination directly by the people, and do it like that. And I talk about it a lot because I do get asked. Some people just they think it's kind of quirky, and you know what, Lambertville's quirky. So I'm like you. There you go.
Okay, and I am quirky, by the way. It looks as if the questions have trailed off. Mike, I'd like to thank you for your candor, your straight talk this evening, your ability to extemporaneously respond to varied and different kinds of questions. I'm going to hand it over to Matt in just a second, but I'd also like to thank the audience for being as participative as you have been and to be engaged in this tonight's town hall. So thank you to Mike and thank you to the audience. And Matt, I'm going to hand this over to you in terms of Mike has some information about his website and some fundraising and what have you. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Richard.
Great, thank you. So on your screen are the websites that you can go to find out more information. So www.michaelmencheformayor.com or www.ilikemikeforlambertville.com. Both of those websites will have more information and email contact if you have other additional questions or want to reach out. Donations by check are also on the screen, so you can send to 25 Ferry Street, Lambertville, New Jersey 08530 as well, and that information is also on the websites.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, and online donations are available as well and welcome.
Okay, great. Perfect.
So Mike, would you just like to have a few closing statements before we sign off?
I just want to thank everyone and hope you're hanging in there. A lot more folks joined after the polling, so I wonder if the ratios remain the same, that where it was like half were not flooded at all, or half were in the half had basements. And I mean, man, when it was only one other person on this call besides me had flooding in the floor above, that kind of like, where's Ferry Street at? Where's North Union at? Come on, guys. I know you got to participate in these things too. But thank you everybody for joining. And I will talk with anybody at any time, whether again on the phone, on Zoom, or in person, according to your convenience. I would welcome the opportunity to talk with you more about Lambertville's future and this city that we still love so much.
Thank you, Mike, and to everybody on the call. Good night and be well and keep well. Good evening.